Alrighty, today I want to talk about emotion, a very basic uh, topic of emotion in the sense of how to control our own emotions in respect to dealing with clients and customers. I remember clearly back in the day, and this is something we found out over time, where whenever we would start with clients, it's all happy, it's all dandy, it's all great. We create an environment of resonance, we establish relationships, we don't find it quite difficult to actually sell what we do. But the problem is, as soon as basically the client finds a fault or they find a reason not to like us or whatever it is, right? As soon as they find an issue, then they bring it up. And we're always um, incentivized to actually fix it. We're always thinking of, we should be fixing it. Our intention is to fix it, right? But at sometimes the emotion sort of gets the best of us, and it's probably purely because back then we were a little bit disorganized, a little bit lazy, a little bit, how would I say, sitting on a high pedestal in the terms of we think we are the ones delivering, a great value. Therefore, the client should understand that sometimes things take time. Here's the thing, specifically, this was in the real estate industry where, it was, our first time into the real estate industry. We were seeing what was out there, and we did manage to land, a client that is well established and well known. The only thing is, we came from weddings, so understanding that there was time that needed to be put into the craft, right? Where we would spend a week or 2 weeks just crafting a 3 to 5 minute video. Whereas in real estate, it was more about speed, right? Still quality, but speed. So that was where things sort of fell apart in the sense where we weren't able to communicate quickly, right? Even though that's such an easy thing. Now, looking back, I don't know why that was an issue. But again, with the last message, it was more so about separating, the work environment with the home environment. And that was already an issue. And that sort of stems into this communications issue where it's like the same computer where we play games is the same computer where we're responding to client emails. So I can see why back then we would actually miss communicating in a timely manner. Right these days, believe it or not, very easy to say, very hard maybe for some people to do, but communications is almost instantaneous for me now. As soon as a message comes in, a response goes out. It's very, very easy for me, right? Um, so that's something we did improve over time. Now, looking back, it was more so like it wasn't that wasn't the only incident. There were more incidents where there were huge clients that we actually managed to convert, surprisingly, um, and yet we would fall into this little trap where it's like as soon as things go a little bit sour, then we would go sour, like completely sour, right? And granted, maybe some of those people that we worked with in the very beginning of our journey weren't of the best caliber in terms of just general, um, how would I say, just general vibes. Like they weren't necessarily the right type of people to work with. Again, it was a mixture of yes man saying yes to everything, a mixture of um, life's best work. It was always life's best work. Even till this day, I'm always chasing life's best work. There's always a bigger and better client out there for me, right? I feel like it's always the next client that's the bigger one, which is great, honestly, which always keeps me on my toes. And I feel like it was the same back then. I think the only point of difference now would be troubleshooting fires, like putting out fires. Back then, when a fire would burn, the fire would burn, and I'll be like, screw this, right? Done with that. Don't care. Can find another person. No dramas, right? Living the paycheck to paycheck life, I think that made it even more deep in the sense of, amplifying that hurt, uh, which did suck because it wasn't like I knew what retainers were back then. We didn't know what retainers were back then. The idea or the word retainer doesn't even make sense. We understand retained clients or returning clients, but the idea of a retainer contract was not even in the mix until later on. So, in saying that, the goal was returning clients, right? The only thing we could muster up back then was like small little payments of like $200 here, $200 there, which is not substantial enough to even run a business, let alone feed or pay yourself, right? Considering, if you start to factor in the bills, if you start to factor in your home, your office, your whatever it is, right? If you actually start to factor in real business expenses, then $200 here and there is not going to do anything, right? Um, so what I'm trying to say is emotion. Learn how to control it in a sense where it's not the end of the world if the client is a little bit pissed off. Maybe they're not even pissed off. They're just pointing out the fact that, hey, you're a little bit crap with communications. Can we pick up the pace? Tomorrow, you could just be excellent at it and it'll never be a problem and you'll never think about it ever again, right? It's just things that people go through. Like in a workplace, in any workplace, there's always peaks and troughs with emotions, right? Sometimes we have a good month, sometimes we have a shit month, right? That's just the nature of how things are. I think not taking it personally is the first step. I think what has helped us specifically is to have a little bit of ego in the sense of understanding that we are the people bringing this value that they cannot produce, they cannot create themselves. Right. Fair enough. Maybe they could find somebody else, but the reason why they chose us specifically was because of a whole nest of things, right? And that creates a uniqueness that they can't replace. I think that in itself has helped me overcome a lot of things. So, in a sense, it allowed me to put on the bigger pants, so to speak, in the situation, even though probably it's got nothing to do with them. It's just all in our heads, right? Putting on the bigger pants to actually put the best face forward and then resolve the problems, right? Because we're all adults at the end of the day. Back then, not so much in the early 20s. But in saying that, you can resolve things and things can go very, very good. In fact, if you're even looking for return clients, you need to have personal development that actually can navigate these waters, right? You need to be able to learn how to deal with clients that maybe get a little bit aggravated or abrupt or whatever the case is, right? At the same time, maybe they're not the right client for you if it gets a little bit too extreme. But if it's reasonable in the sense of, we actually did something wrong or we're slow to respond or whatever the heck it is, right? At the end of the day, it was all communication, right? I think with that real estate client, we didn't understand that it was about speed of the service, right? Because we go and film a house, they basically need it the next day, right? Whereas we're coming from a place where it's like we need to spend a week to make this video, where it should be I should be able to spit this out the same day, right? So in saying that, if say we actually had a sit down with the client and actually discussed what was going on, maybe they would have told us, look, we're just looking for a little bit more speed. And chances are they probably had 4 or 5 different other content creators on the line. And they were just like, yep, this is just a waste of time. Let's just move to the next one. Because that's just how business is. And we weren't like a big fish back then, right? We didn't offer something superiorly unique. Maybe in the sense of the craft and the visuals and the storytelling, yes, but not so much in terms of being irreplaceable, right? So, regardless of that, that's not what we're focusing on. What we're focusing on is emotions and how to navigate the troughs, like how to navigate negative emotions, how to actually kick back, unwind, pause for a second, think about what happened, right? I think in the very beginning, at a younger age, it's very sort of ego driven with the way things work around the world because we haven't got that much experience. We're very simple minded. It's like it's either black or white in the sense of what are the things that we like, what are the things that we don't like, right? And chances are, you know, well, I know for a fact that we haven't at that time been through a lot of conflict resolution, right? We haven't experienced a lot of, not trauma, but like a lot of periods where, there's a lot of things that we have to resolve, right? Even when it comes to relationships or even business relationships, right? It's kind of the same thing, almost, sort of, not really. But in saying that, knowing how to navigate that domain and actually prosper from it, because inherently we are both people who seek positivity at all times, right? That's just who we are. But I know the younger me, the you right now, as soon as it crosses a certain line, it's like, see you later, basically, right? And looking back today, man, we pretty much closed the bridge on a few clients, which was not the best, right? Because now it's sort of like I know if I go back to Sydney, back to my hometown, if I take a stroll in the area, there could be a chance that I might see some of these people and I might not want to be in that area, right? I think that's one thing that sucks the most in terms of not being able to resolve those conflicts. Going back to my hometown and literally avoiding people because of the past, right? Even though it was like nothing too crazy, I mean, it's business at the end of the day. We were all learning, right? Especially with the younger, startups that we worked with that could have been friends of friends or whatever it is. Um, it's all well and good. That's absolutely fine, right? But I think just having that burden alone, like there was already shit to deal with from high school, which is already, a specific set of people that I don't want to see, right? Not that anything crazy happened, but it's just the past, the scars, right? They're there, right? And they probably feel the same way in a different light, right? I'm sure there's people out there who don't want to see me, don't want to talk to me, who actively avoid me because of whatever, right? And I think that's absolutely natural and that's absolutely normal, right? Growing up, learning about yourself, learning how to communicate with others, learning how to treat people the right way, and all of that stuff, right? So, coming back to emotion, like it's very easy to be happy and all that stuff, but I think what has become quite valuable to me today, even though it's a past sort of lesson that I know how to do very well now, is more so being calm in negative situations, being calm in extreme situations, and just being an adult and actually processing things and taking the time to actually solve things, right? Like, there are some people who just don't get it, and that's absolutely fine. And there's no need to waste your time, and just you can just leave things as is and walk away. You know, not everything has to be resolved, even though innately I think, as men, we like to solve problems, right? But with the addition of ego, it creates all of these, extra emotions that's not even necessary to actually join, the table in the sense of solving the issue, right? So, in essence, I think the strength of actually learning how to conflict resolve will actually give you a better ability to actually retain clients. Because think about a retainer, right? If you don't know what a retainer is now, it essentially is an extended, super long contract, right? What we were used to back in the day with payslip to payslip work was a contract per job or whatever it is, or an initial contract that will be the outline for all the little jobs, right? Basically, that's the start and the end of the lifetime of the contract. With the retainer, it's sort of like a huge agreement where, say, for example, it could be 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is. It's an extended agreement where, say for example, if it was in terms of content creation for us back then, let's say we do a 2-year deal with, um, a real estate franchise or a branch, right, in one of the suburbs, then essentially that's pretty much guaranteed work for the period of the contract, right? Granted, there are, clauses that allow you to exit. There are, things that will cause the contracts to break, right? There's a lot of conditions, so to speak, just to make it fair for both parties. But in essence, like that is the advanced version of retaining clients, so to speak, right? Now, in saying that, after now that I've explained that, imagine now you got one of those signed. You basically have to retain this relationship for 2 years. And in any relationship, let's just think of just regular friendships or, finding partners and all that stuff. If you're with someone for 2 years, it's not always going to be happy, right? There's always going to be an issue, right? That will arise at some point. And it's up to you to identify those, those times that come up. Obviously, it'll be easy to identify, but also learn how to navigate when those things arise, or learn how to prevent these things from even happening in the first place. Nobody is 100%, awesome in the sense of there's going to be zero issues, right? Maybe for like even giant enterprise corporate, even if you think about that, there's always going to be issues. It's just more so one-sided because you have to deal with customer support and this and that. You don't actually talk to the owner of the business. But for small business owners, it's very much open in the sense of if there's an issue, usually the founder, the CEO, is going to address the issue, right? Because it's not a very large team. So there's a lot of different dynamics in the world of small business, right? But regardless of what size you are, there's always going to be issues because things escalate. Even if you have 200 staff members, things will escalate to management. Things will escalate to the manager's manager. Things will escalate potentially to the CEO, right? There's literally a thing in the media world. What was it called? It was called risk management, where they train, C-suite, executives on how to actually manage situations, like literally damage control, which is just crazy, right? If you think about it, like that actually exists, right? And I think that is like a huge ultimate form of, what we're dealing here with this simplistic conflict resolution conversation that we're having here. So, in essence, I think, this is in the realm of personal development. Right? I keep saying I think. I actually know this, but I keep saying I think, right? Whatever. Anyways, this is in the realm of personal development. Personal development in a nutshell, and we'll go over this another time, I think, I know, is a huge, huge, huge area of expertise that makes an individual become quite strong in every aspect. Because at the end of the day, no matter what you do, you're always going to be dealing with people, right? Every person is full of emotions. If you know how to not necessarily communicate with all different types of people and personalities, but more so to the ones that matter, the ones that connect with you, right? You should be able, within that spectrum of people that you click with, understand how to essentially treat them the best. In turn, right, they're going to give you that as a reaction, right? Treat people the way that you want to be treated, right? But just focus on the area of people that matter in terms of business, anyway, right? With friends, you should be doing that with all of your friends as much as you can. As you grow older, the group gets smaller, but that's just natural. Only because I think it's because of a few factors. It's like time you spend with people, how close you are with them, and how often you see them. So naturally, as you grow older, these three elements sort of diminish naturally, right? Back in school, it was pretty much present there because everyone was showing up every day. you were all close to each other and you were literally talking to each other all the time because you would be in class together, recess, lunch, and all that stuff. So it was easier to make friends back then. As you grow older and you get out of the college, the uni phase, you don't have those environments where people are just around, right? That's why people sort of cling to workmates in a sense, right? When they get older because you see them every day, right? Anyways, not the story that we're going to, not the lesson that we're going to talk about today. Um, I wanted to focus on emotion, and it pretty much stemmed into focusing on conflict resolution. So, I think that pretty much wraps it up for this one. I don't want to make it too difficult or complicated to think about. It should be quite simple. It's something that takes time to understand. You know, it's a lot of reflection work post issues, right? So if something does happen, right, let it play through as is. You don't need to actively keep something in the forefront of your mind and navigate through your life with this. You know, that's just too much of a burden. It's more so, here's a little golden nugget of insight. Keep it in your back pocket. When something arises, you can be like, aha, it happened. Now, where was that thing that we talked about? Let's pop that open and listen to it again and then just reflect on what happened, right? And then you can essentially replay the whole scenario in your mind, just break down the situations and understand, okay, what should I do next? Before you react straight away, just understand, like just calm down, right? Understand what's going on, right? Just always remember to be the bigger person and actually identify the issue. Once you can see what the issue is, and usually it is the other party complaining about something, right? Can you actually come to a stage where you can ethically, I don't even know if ethically is even required for this, but if you can come to a point where you can create a solution for them, right? Rather than adding fuel to the fire, just come with a fire hydrant and just put it out, right? Because that in turn will honestly create a better relationship between you and the client. And over time, it'll, harbor and manifest trust, which makes it even easier, right? Because then it's just like dealing with issues, which could be, say, for example, a 7 out of 10 today with a high level of trust, it could become a 1, right? Because they know, oh, it's doing, it's fine. Yeah, we got an issue, but it's nothing, no dramas. Just let him know, he'll fix it. It's all good, right? That's this situation that you want to be in. You want to create so much trust with your customers and your clients that they know that this is not a big issue. Whereas in comparison to, say, for example, a fresh client, they don't know how you're going to react. They don't know how you're going to resolve things. And it could be a 7 out of 10 in terms of feeling, but you could dwindle it down to a 1 for them because they know that you got a huge fire truck and you can put out flames like nobody's business, right? I think that's a sort of telltale sign that someone is actually very, very good at conflict resolution, right? Because usually it is going to be related about work, right? It is going to be related about your business. It is going to be related about what you actually offer, right? Because at the end of the day, the clients are the one who are paying, right? If they are the ones who are paying, then they will have a certain level of expectancy in terms of customer service. So it's imperative, it's so important that you understand what they actually need. Because by understanding what they need and then offering that to them, you understand more about what your business should be, right? And if it falls in alignment still at that point, then you will happily continue to do that, right? And the more you understand what your actually business requires, from this specific client, then you can understand, okay, I still want to continue to head this way. Or if it's not in alignment with yourself, then it's like, okay, maybe this is not the right type of client. Not to say that you shouldn't fix things, you should fix things, but then understand that, okay, this is going to be the way that it's going to be. So, do I continue finding people like this because I like to do it, or B, do I pivot in some way to make it better for who I am? Because essentially, you want to build an environment for yourself that makes it easy for you, right? You want to be in an environment where work is almost play. If it is, even better, right? There's so many little intricacies and nuances that appear in your everyday life, right? Especially when you come to a point of self employment. It's so important that you have to be in alignment with yourself. It starts on the interior, right? And then you have an external reflection. If the external reflection is different from your interior, you have conflict. If the external reflection is the same as your interior, then you have alignment, right? And that's where you want to be, because life is just easy then, right? But if it's not, then you're always in conflict. And if you're always in conflict, it just adds all these extra byproducts of stress, right? Overthinking, imposter syndrome, all of this bullshit that comes along with it. And you don't want that. So from, where you are now, around 21, let's say try to focus on the next couple of years, or the shorter the better, in actually finding alignment, right? So you can actually deal with these problems a lot easier. Someone who is in conflict, right, might take longer to develop these conflict resolution, skills, because they're really, really pushing against the resistance to put on a happy face, fix the problem. Yes, you're right. Blah blah blah. And as soon as the call hangs up, or as soon as you leave the meeting, you're just like, "Fuck this!" Right? I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it because this is my business. This is that. Blah 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 blah. I'm just going to do it. Versus if you're in alignment, chances are it could be like, oh, I didn't notice that you actually see it that way. You know what I'm going to do? I am going to be a little bit more active with communications. I'm so sorry. I was just deep into the work, right? My mistake. Apologies. Um, I'll make sure that everything's going to be smooth ongoing. So, all good. Okay. Don't make it a big deal, right? Cop it on the chin, walk away. And in this case, it was just a communications issue. It's not huge, right? It's important. It's not huge. So, in essence, alignment is important, right? Emotions, it's so important to understand. Like a lot of the things that I'm going to tell you, they might seem scattered, like here and there, which it kind of is. It really is. But ultimately, they form something very cohesive in the end, because I'm giving you little tidbits here and there about different things, and I'll slowly stitch them all together naturally, because they all inherently relate to each other. So that's it for today. I will see you next time, and take care of yourself, and don't eat too much sugar, because that gives you a fuck ton of pimples.